Hello and welcome. You're listening to Westferry Times, and this is the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're digging into something that affects literally everyone, the food we eat. Specifically, we're looking at food fraud.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some really interesting source material here about the latest developments with the UK's National Food Crime Unit, the NFCU.
That's right. The sources point to some pretty significant changes, especially around new powers they've just got and, what they're really focusing on now.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this. We want to understand, what is food crime, really? How big a deal is it here in the UK?
Yeah, get a sense of the scale.
Exactly. And then explore these new NFCU capabilities, their priorities, and crucially, what does this actually mean for food businesses and for you, the person listening?
Think of me as your guide through the key bits of this material.
Yeah.
It's complex, but definitely important stuff.
Brilliant. Okay, let's jump straight in then. Food crime. It sounds quite dramatic. What does it actually cover based on our sources? Can we nail down a definition?
Sure. So the sources define food crime pretty clearly. It's basically about serious fraud and related criminal activities that happen anywhere along the food supply chain.
Okay, so not just like an honest mistake on a label.
No, definitely not. We're talking about deliberate criminal intent here. The sources mention specific things like adulteration.
What's that exactly?
That's when someone adds something to a food product that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Maybe to make it seem heavier or bulk it out with cheaper stuff or even hide spoilage.
Right.
Then there's substitution, swapping one ingredient for another, usually a cheaper one, without declaring it, like passing off one type of fish as a more expensive one.
Okay, got it.
Misrepresentation is another big one, essentially lying about the food, where it came from, its quality, organic status, things like that. And often you'll find document fraud tied in, trying to make it all look legitimate on paper.
And the motivation, it's not just about making dodgy money, is it? I imagine there are other risks.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, deceiving consumers for profit is a core part of it, but the health risks are really significant.
Yeah.
If someone's adding harmful substances or misrepresenting allergens or selling food that's actually unfit for people to eat, well, the consequences can be incredibly serious for public health.
That feels like a massive vulnerability. Do the sources give us any idea of just how widespread this is in the UK, like economically?
They do provide a figure, and it's pretty eye-opening. The Food Standards Agency estimates that food crime could be costing the UK economy. That's the wait for it. Up to $1.96 billion a year.
Wow. Nearly 2 billion pounds.
Annually.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's not just petty theft, is it? That's money lost to real businesses, potential costs for us as consumers.
Exactly. It underlines the seriousness. And the sources do point to recent incidents, things like specific cases involving misrepresented meat or sales of unsafe food being uncovered, showing this isn't just theoretical. It's happening.
Okay, so it's a multi-billion-pound problem, real health risks happening now. Now, the sources highlight a really key development, these new investigatory powers for the NFCU. This sounds like a big shift. What exactly are these powers?
Yeah, this is probably the headline change from the material. As of May 1st, 2025, so very recently, the NFCU has been granted powers under PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act.
PACE powers. That sounds like proper police stuff. What does that let them do now that they couldn't before?
Well, it's a standard tool for law enforcement, yes. Specifically, it allows NFCU officers to apply for and execute search warrants themselves.
Ah, okay. So they can actually get a warrant and go search premises.
Precisely. Before this, they might have had to rely more on, say, local authorities or police partners or perhaps voluntary cooperation, which can be slower or less direct. Now, if they get intelligence pointing to food crime activity at a specific site,
They can act fast.
they can act fast. They can secure that warrant and go in quickly to seize evidence. And in the food industry, where products move fast or evidence might be perishable, that speed is absolutely crucial for effective investigation. It's a real game changer for them.
So it makes them much more sort of proactive, able to disrupt things directly.
That's the idea. It gives them the direct enforcement tools they need to collect evidence right at the source.
Okay, so they've got these stronger tools now. Where are they actually focusing their efforts? What are the NFCU's main priorities, according to the sources?
Right, so the NFCU has what they call a control strategy, and the sources lay out the key areas. A big focus is on misrepresentation of lamb, beef, poultry, and dairy products.
Misrepresentation in what way?
It covers things like lying about the origin where the animal was raised, for example, or its status, perhaps stolen livestock being passed off as legitimate, or even meat that's technically unfit for human consumption finding its way into the supply chain.
Good grief. So much more serious than just calling something British when it isn't.
Much more serious, potentially.
Hmm.
Alongside that, they're also prioritizing outright adulteration and substitution within those same categories: lamb, beef, poultry, dairy.
Okay, what else?
Another major priority is something called waste diversion. This seems particularly focused on animal byproducts in the red meat, poultry, dairy, and animal feed sectors.
Waste diversion, does that mean like stuff that should be thrown out is being reused somehow?
That's often what it entails, yes. Things like animal byproducts that are legally meant for non-food uses or need specific processing for safety might be illegally diverted back into either human food or animal feed, skipping safety checks.
Right, I see. That sounds risky.
Definitely. And beyond those specific areas, the strategy also mentions monitoring supply chains identified as having a high risk of authenticity issues for the UK. So a broader, more strategic watch on known weak spots.
It helps to have concrete examples. The sources mentioned a couple of recent cases. Can you share those to sort of bring this down to earth a bit, show the real impact?
Yeah, absolutely. The sources give two quite stark examples from 2024. One involved Neal's Yard Dairy, a pretty well-known name in cheese.
Oh, yes, I know them.
Well, they were defrauded of 300,000 pounds worth of cheese.
300,000 pounds. How?
Criminals basically posed as legitimate buyers, placed huge orders, got the cheese delivered, and then just vanished without paying.
Wow.
That's a massive hit for a business like that.
It really is. And there was a similar case mentioned. Chapel and Swan Smokehouse lost 37,000 pounds worth of smoked salmon through a very similar imposter scam.
So these aren't just opportunistic crimes, they're planned, targeted frauds against businesses.
Exactly. They show the significant financial damage food crime can inflict directly on legitimate companies.
Okay, so businesses are clearly suffering. But how does this all filter down to affect you, the listener, the consumer, grabbing things off the shelf? Well, as we touched on earlier, the most direct and worrying impact is the potential health risk. If food is adulterated with something harmful, or if it's actually unfit meat being sold as prime cuts, you could be the one consuming it.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
Beyond that immediate danger, though, every incident like this chips away at trust. Trust in the brands, trust in the shops, trust in the whole system that gets food to your plate.
And if you can't trust the label, what can you trust?
Precisely. And that erosion of trust isn't just, a feeling. It can have real economic consequences too, hurting honest businesses, maybe affecting prices if confidence drops across the board.
So for those honest businesses trying to do the right thing, facing these kinds of sophisticated scams, what can they actually do to protect themselves? Do the sources offer any advice?
They do suggest some practical steps. Things like implementing really robust verification processes, checking out new customers or suppliers very carefully, especially for large or unusual orders.
Due diligence, basically.
Exactly. Conducting regular audits of their own supply chains to spot vulnerabilities. And just generally staying informed about the kinds of fraud tactics being used, like those imposter scams. The NFCU actually provides a resource mentioned in the source material.
Yeah.
It's a food fraud resilience self-assessment tool. Businesses can use it to kind of check their own defenses and see where they might need to tighten things up.
That sounds useful. Okay, let's flip it to the consumer side. What about you listening now? What can people do? We're not running supply chain audits from our kitchen.
No, but consumers play a vital role too. The advice from the sources is really about vigilance. Trust your instincts. If a deal seems too good to be true, or the packaging looks dodgy, or the product itself just doesn't seem right, don't just ignore it.
So pay attention.
Pay attention. And importantly, report anything suspicious. This is a key way intelligence reaches the NFCU.
And how do you report it? Is there a specific place to go?
Yes, the sources highlight this specifically. The NFCU runs a confidential reporting line. The number is 0800 028 1180. If you suspect food crime, that's the number to call.
Okay, 0800 028 1180. We should make sure that's clear.
Absolutely. And beyond reporting, the sources also suggest supporting transparency. Choosing businesses that are open about where their food comes from can help encourage good practice overall.
That makes sense. So looking ahead then, the NFCU has these new powers, clear priorities. What's next in the fight against food crime, according to the material?
Well, the future focus seems to be on a few key areas. One is enhancing collaboration with international partners. Food crime doesn't respect borders, so working with authorities in other countries is essential.
Makes sense. Supply chains are global.
Totally. They're also investing in advanced technologies for detection, using better science, better data analysis to spot fraud that might be harder to see otherwise. Think sophisticated lab testing to check authenticity, for example,
Using tech to stay ahead.
hopefully. And there's also a big push towards more preventive measures, trying to design out opportunities for fraud, making the whole system more resilient, rather than just reacting after the crime has happened.
Prevention is definitely better than cure, especially here.
Absolutely. The overall goal, as stated in the source material, is really to create a hostile environment for food criminals in the UK, make too risky, too difficult for them to operate here.
Right. Safeguarding the integrity of the whole UK food supply.
That's the aim.
Okay, let's just quickly pull the threads together from this deep dive. We've established that food crime is a really serious issue. It's not trivial. It carries potentially huge economic costs, nearly £2 billion estimated annually, and critically poses real risks to public health.
And we've seen how criminals are using sophisticated methods, like those imposter scams targeting businesses like Neil's Yard Dairy.
Definitely. A major development is the NFCU gaining these new PACE powers as of May 1st, 2025, letting them apply for and execute search warrants themselves, which should make them much faster and more effective investigators.
And their focus is clear. Tackling misrepresentation and adulteration, especially in meat and dairy, dealing with waste diversion, and keeping a close eye on high-risk supply chains.
We've also talked about the impact on potential health dangers and that fundamental erosion of trust in the food we all rely on.
But also what can be done. Businesses using things like the NFCU's self-assessment tool to boost their defenses, and consumers staying vigilant, trusting their gut, and using that confidential reporting line 0800 028 1180 if something seems wrong.
It really does feel like a collective effort is needed. Your awareness, your willingness to report something suspicious, that's genuinely part of the bigger picture, part of the solution.
It really is. And, it makes you think, so much of our daily life relies on trust in things we can't really see or verify ourselves, especially food.
Yeah, you just pick it off the shelf assuming it's safe and it is what it says it is.
Exactly. We rely on this incredibly complex, often hidden system working properly with integrity. So the thought to maybe leave with is, how much does our everyday sense of security depend on that hidden integrity? And what really happens not just to our wallets or even our health, but to our basic confidence when that integrity is deliberately broken by crime?
That's a really powerful point, something to definitely chew on. Thank you so much for breaking all of that down for us today.
My pleasure. Important topic.
It really is. And thank you for tuning in to the deep dive on Westferry Times. We hope this gave you a clearer insight into food fraud, the work being done by the NFCU, and how we all fit into keeping our food safe and authentic. We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, take care, stay informed, and maybe look a little closer at that label. Goodbye for now.